When Sally first saw the SPQR tattoo on Percy's arm, she was more than appalled. She was terrified of the fact that maybe her little boy had finally grown up, finally found out that he didn't need her as much as she needed him. Her suspicions were proved wrong when Percy ran into the room begging her to help him open the concealed jam jar. Once, Percy drove to Annabeth's mortal school to pick her up. Annabeth was happy to see him, but truthfully, the part she most enjoyed was seeing the dumbstruck look on the popular girls' faces at the realization that the shy, quiet, natty blonde actually hadn't been lying about having a boyfriend when they tried to set her up with the most disgusting kid in school. Percy was banned from going to any horse riding stables because the horses would immediately drop the person they were carrying and gallop towards him, completely ignoring their trainers' voices. Leo was determined to actively participate on Valentine's Day, even though he was the only one on the Argo team that wasn't in a relationship. When the couples were exchanging presents, Leo handed a little red box to each of the girls. In the box was a ring carved with the symbol of their godly parent. The girls were all so touched by his present, they each gave him a kiss on the cheek. But the best part of that day was seeing the priceless faces of Percy, Jason, and Frank when their girlfriends fangled over his present for a full hour. Imagine the Argo 2 flying over the ocean, and Percy says something stupid, so Annabeth shoves him off the ship, and the other demigods are freaking out like, oh my god, you killed him! Annabeth kinda casually waves her hand, and about 2 minutes later, Percy reappears, hovering over the side of the Argo 2, using the water to lift him, and they're all expecting him to be furious or upset, but he kinda just rolls his eyes and says, well, that was a slight overreaction. One day, Annabeth accidentally walked in on Percy muttering to himself about ideas on how to propose to her. Annabeth was touched by the gesture, but she reminded him that they had been engaged since they were 12, when Percy had thrown an apple to Annabeth in their game of hacky sack. This counted as a proposal in ancient Greece. Needless to say, Percy took half a day to process the information, but he finally concluded that this had been the fate's plan all along. They were meant to be together, ever since the day they first met. Percy and Annabeth were trying to have the most informal date ever. After all the drama they'd been through, they at least wanted to attempt at being normal teenagers for once. When they walked into the nearest McDonald's, they froze, seeing a familiar figure. Nicole looked up from playing with the toy, a minuscule model of Zeus that he was making fly, a fry dangling from his mouth. He made small whooshing noises, like air. Seeing them, he hurriedly yelled, I can't explain. After the war, Leo noticed the new campers coming in with disabled legs and full neck down paralysis. Not deterred, he built mech limbs and suits so that his new friends can run and walk again. They also come with weapon holders, breath mints, and flame cannons. Very scary. Annabeth walked into her classroom. It had been 12 years since she was married to Percy. It was almost the day when she first ar- It was also the day when she first arrived at Camp Half-Blood. She was sitting at her desk, grading papers, waiting for everyone to arrive. One of her students, Louise, came in carrying a small pine tree, his face blocked by the tree. Hey, Mrs. Jackson, I brought you a pine tree. He frowned. I don't know why. It just kind of felt right, he said. Thank you, Louise, Annabeth said. That's when she realized that he was Luke's reincarnation, and it felt right for him to give her the tree, because that today's the day Salia turned into a tree. After the war, when Piper returned to camp, Anasina Kappa scoffed at Aphrodite Campion for being weak and pathetic, right in front of her. Piper, armed with a swan in her charm speak, is on the Kappa in 9 seconds flat. No one dared to disrespect Captain Ten again. Before he left Algeria, Leo had shown Calypso how to do I love you in Morse code. Whenever he thought about her on the Argo 2, he'd absent-mindedly tap I love you on the table. It seemed a slim chance, but Leo knew that somewhere in the world, Calypso was doing the same. Annabeth was sitting on the edge of the dock, her feet in the water. She looked down the water gleaming in the light. She didn't notice Connor and Travis sneaking up on her until she was in the lake. Connor! Travis! I am going to kill you! They ran, but a giant hand made out of water came out of the lake. They stared open-mouthed, then ran. They didn't get too far. They were snatched up and tossed in the lake. Annabeth smiled. Seaweed brain, she thought. So one night, after fighting some monsters, Nico had this really bad shoulder injury, and he lost a lot of blood. Will had to go around the seven, testing each of their blood types, because he knew Nico wouldn't like to have a stranger's blood in his. It turned out that the only other person who had the compatible blood type was Percy. When Nico returned to consciousness again, every time Percy saw him, he just burst out laughing, and Nico couldn't work out why until he started saying, I am Nico's type! And wouldn't shut up about it until Annabeth promised him blue pancakes. It was almost 4 years since they defeated Gia, and now, after graduating from a university in Camp Jupiter, Percy and Annabeth drove home to Camp Halfblood. Unfortunately, they got a flat tire in the outskirts of Manhattan before reaching Long Island Sound. An old man pointed them to the nearest repair shop, and when they arrived at the said shop, Annabeth elbowed him. The sign read, Leo and Calypso's Garage. Auto repair and mechanical monsters. Nico uses the self-checkout line in the grocery store every time because it means you have minimal human interactions. And he's all for that. He's mastered the self-checkout line. And you actually help other people. Like an older lady is having trouble getting the damn thing to scan her bread, and Nico smiles faintly, steps up, and asks if he can be of assistance. The elderly are okay. They're usually very kind, and he doesn't care that he has shaggy hair and his clothes are all black. She just smiles and hands him the loaf. Nico does all of the scanning for her, and she tells him that he's a fine young man, and Nico is just beaming for the rest of the day. Percy and Jason have the same shoe size, and they swap shoes all the time. Frank has the biggest feet. You know what they say about a guy with big feet? No? What? Uh, they say, damn, you got some big feet. When Percy was asked to share an interesting fact about his family at school, he didn't hesitate to say, my grandfather possessed the body of the son of the guy who invented the internet. His teacher thought it was a metaphor, but Annabeth and the rest of the seven in his class just stared at Percy with wide eyes. Sally sat down in an armchair, trying to think of an idea to write about for her book. All of a sudden, Percy ran into the room, with Annabeth following him, trying to grab whatever he took from her. But he was taller, and holding it above his head. "Percy! Give it back!" Annabeth yelled. They ran around the couch, and on the second time around, Percy tripped over the corner of the coffee table and fell onto the couch, with Annabeth falling on top of him. That's when an idea hit Sally. She would write a book series called Percy Jackson and the Olympians, but not under her name, under a pen name. How about Rick? Rick Riordan. A trait that Reyna and Nico shared was what the campers called their wall smiles. The two never usually smiled, but when in battle and determined to win, they would let a savage, dangerous grin spread over their face, which basically meant you were doomed. Seems like they'd be terrible at kids. It's actually great of them. Nico, Salia. Seems like they'd be great of kids. It's actually terrible of them. Annabeth, Grover, Piper. Seems like they'd be great of kids. Is great of them. Frank, Jason, Percy, Leo, Rachel, Hazel, Will. Seems like they'd be terrible of kids. Is terrible of them. Reyna, Octavian. Reyna, Nicole, and Coach Hedge were all pretty sick of each other by the time they got the Athena Parthenos to Camp Hoffman. Their journey was spent like this. Gleason Hedgestock licking the statue. Nicole and Angelo, hurry the hell up. I'm trying to concentrate. Leave me be unless you two want to end up in West Virginia. Out of anger, one of the Hermes campers sent their father a box filled with newly bought stuff, receipt and everything else included. There was a post-it on every item, labeled, "Yeah, Dad, that's right. I actually paid for these." That's it for today. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And oh, don't forget the notification bell. Until next video, bye!